Boom, boom, boom. What's up, everybody? We are on time. That is how I like it. Good to be here with you tonight, Jeff.
Yeah, good to be here.
All of our listeners and attendees and anybody else that might show up. So, tonight we're here with our second round of our public discourse on several of the subjects that we will be covering in our 3-day free workshop that's going up next Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Jeff and I are going to be sharing with anybody that wants to show up. If you are interested in attending that, you can use that QR code to get you to the public events calendar, which will allow you to register for that. Please do forgive me. I am super sinusy tonight. Got a sore throat. Jeff and I are both a little bit under the weather, but we're both happy to be here with you. And we are going to be talking about the topics of intention setting, set and setting, and the supernatural world from the perspective of space holding. So last week or last, whatever, 2 or 3 days ago, we talked mainly from a personal experiential level. And tonight we'd like to use our focus coming from the role of space holder. This is something that both Jeff and I have a fair amount of experience in. If you don't know me or what I've been doing for the last however long, that's the majority of my work has been holding space. I've sat for well over 1,000 people, and it's been an amazing journey. I've got to really experience some wonders. And Jeff has been Jeff, you're like 2-3 years deep in working with folks now.
Yep.
And it's been wonderful watching Jeff and his journey here. And working more and more closely with him and holding space. And I know that he has a ton of wisdom that he all shares with me and our community on the regular, and will be sharing with us all tonight. So let's just start it out with the intention setting, Jeff. All right. So when you're holding space with someone, how are you talking to people that you're holding space for about this very common phrase we hear in the psychedelic world of intention setting?
Well, first off, I think, coming from my own experience with my own intention setting, of course, is where I feel like I draw the most of my background for explaining that to other people and going into the space, getting prepared to hold space with someone, having those conversations. And for myself, of course, intention setting has evolved and grown along the time, along my time on this journey. So I used to think that it was pretty important to have a solid, direct intention for exactly what I wanted my experience to be. I'm not saying that it's not, but along the way, I've learned in my own experience that by having a specific intention, sometimes I can feel let down by my experience if it doesn't happen the way that I want it to happen. Sometimes I can feel frustrated at my experience because it didn't happen the way that I wanted it to happen. I can feel like I've wasted my time and really get hyper focused in the fact that I'm not getting what I had my intention set for, which really negates what I was supposed to learn in that experience, what I was supposed to get out of the experience, because I wasn't open. I was too focused on my intention. So that being said, when I have conversations about intention setting with individuals that I'm going to hold space for, I try to look at it from a perspective of what are our intentions for the processing? What are our intentions for integrating into our life? Not so much with the experience that we're going to have, but what are the things that we're learning from our experience? How are we processing those? How are we moving those into that integration into our life? So for me, it's a little bit more focused now on after the experience, as to where in the beginning I was focused on, primarily what's happening during the experience, and am I doing it right, or am I? So I think it takes a load off of the mind from my own experiences to allow it to go wherever it's supposed to go, and to understand that I'm going to get what I was supposed to get. And like I said, the intention moves over more into the processing and integration part.
Mm-hmm. Man, there's so much there of value that you said there, and I deeply identify with this. Trying to get out of the way of the sacrament, trying to get out of the way of the experience, and a lot of times our intentions, which can become almost demands. People come into these things, and the way how psilocybin is being treated now, as this, I hesitate to say cure all, but there's kind of this, some of the public discourse around it is like, this is what psilocybin does. This is how it works. You set your intention, you set your setting, you integrate, and then you're a better person. And like what you said about intention setting being applied to integration is, I think, one of the wisest things that I've heard in a long time around these two topics. Because as we all know, I see it in the chat, and we know from our personal experiences and those we hold in space with others, is that more often than not, you have an intention and you get whatever you get, right? Like maybe it is kind of geared towards your intention. Maybe that unfolds in the weeks or months afterwards and you see how it was connected to your intention. But to go at this work, not even just thinking, like preparing for integrating your experience is like that is forward thinking that needs to be really broadly integrated into psychedelic work, in my opinion. Now, I also want to hit this, that you spoke from your experience. You said, this is what I tell people who I'm working with based on my experience. And please let me just say, if someone is holding space for you, or you're seeking someone to hold space for you, one of the most important things you can do is make sure that they have plenty of their own experience. It's like, let your intention going into this work be to be supported by someone who is knowledgeable and experienced. And the more experienced they are, they're probably going to communicate that they know less than the people who are not so experienced, right? Like there's no field of work that it's hard for me to imagine any line of work that is more susceptible to what's known as the Dunning-Kruger effect, right? Where you think you know how this thing works until you get so far deep into it that you realize that you had no idea. There's so much more to learn. And so in this question, I think about it like, how do I talk to the people that I'm holding space for about intentions? And what intentions do I have as a space holder going into a session? And, generally, I don't like to guide or direct anybody's experience. I like to make suggestions based on my experience and experience I've had holding space for other people. And it does seem that the most effective, the most empowering intention is to just let the medicine do its work. You show me what I need. Because here's the deal. If we knew what we needed, we wouldn't need the mushrooms. Like, that's why we're coming to the mushroom, right? Now, I'm going to say this. There is the potential, and I've seen this play out, I've done it myself, to look at this with a little bit of a twist. And I think there's a lot of potential for personal empowerment in this perspective. And that is, first of all, we got to come at this from a dose dependent perspective, right? So if you go into a mushroom trip, and everybody's going to know their own response to a degree. If you've never taken mushrooms before ever in your life, you don't know how sensitive you might be. But most people come to find their own personal individual level of sensitivity, right? So I kind of know what a 3-gram dose of average cubensis is going to be like for me, or I know what a 5-gram dose of ovoids, at least in intensity. Usually, it's very general, it's very subjective, but generally I know where I'm going to be at this dosage level. And I know if I do like 5 grams or more of cubensis or ovoids, then I am pretty much completely subject to the experience. But if I back down and I take like a 0.5 gram or 1 gram of said mushroom, then I'm actually going to be able to hold focus a little more intently through that experience. And that can be a really powerful way to explore a specific subject or, behavioral change that you want to make. Like if you're trying to quit smoking cigarettes, for instance, or you're trying to like change your relationship with any kind of substance, let's just say, and you take, 1 gram of mushrooms and you're of moderate average level tolerance, then there's a very good likelihood that you can take that time and really focus in on that subject and maybe be able to pull out more direct information about this than you would if it was a dose that really kind of knocked you off center. It's not going to say that that big dose isn't going to reveal some important stuff around a certain topic. And it's also not to say that we should try to control the experience, but there is a very interesting intersect here of our ability to kind of apply our attention versus just allow the thing to happen to us. I'm seeing somebody talking about this Brian Johnson thing. Yeah, I saw that. I don't even know what to say about that. I saw right before this call that he was eating the best salad he ever had in his life. So I'm just glad he didn't go into the death loop on his recorded. There's this guy, it's like a longevity expert. He took 5 grams for the first time, and he wasn't live streaming it, but he had somebody there with monitoring. He's got like, I don't know, tons of followers on X, and he just came out of his trip about an hour or so ago. But anyway, that's a big, interesting side thing that's going on for everybody that wants to check that out. So, how does that land with you, Jeff? What are your thoughts around what I just spoke to in terms of like, applying attention to a mid-level dose? Is that something you've ever worked with, or something that you've ever seen anybody else work with?
Yeah, I mean, so I find that, so I guess working with others, I have found the doses in between 2.5 grams to 3.5 to be highly effective for someone to be able to sit, keep their intentions, and somewhat work through the things that they had desired that they wanted to work through. I agree with you 100%. Some people are even lower dose than 5. Some are at about the 4-gram
Oh, yeah.
range. They're just, but I agree. Most people that have some experience that, are more frequent in the 3.5, 4, 2, even 2.5. I find, just my personal experience, and I guess quite a few people that I've sat for the lower dose ranges. I think a lot of people find more physical discomfort in those ranges, and not that there's not a lot to be found in those experiences, but they are more of in an experience with what they are feeling physically and what's going on in their body, being aware of that, and how they are letting go and allowing it to do its thing. So I've also, like I said, I've seen people that were experienced that had intentions, and they became frustrated in their experience when they weren't able to control it the way that they wanted to control it. So I think it's healthy, and I think that it's a good idea of an intention. However, to be fluid and to be able to flow with the experience, and to understand that if it's not in alignment with this, then I'm still here for whatever else is to come. That allows me to let go of what those intentions are. And that's the experience that I've seen people who have gotten stuck and been able to shift out of that, kind of move into just accepting the experience, and then getting so much more out of the rest of the experience, rather than staying in that anger, or that frustration. I didn't get what I thought I was going to get. This isn't what I thought it was. So that's my experience with it. It's hard to discuss some of these things without going into people's personal experiences.
Well, I mean, we can talk about experiences here. It's just we're keeping them anonymous, as you know.
Yeah, right. Well, before we did that, or if we do get into that, I just wanted to touch on this first. I thought something that came up for me was the expectations of myself as a space holder. What are your intentions? You were talking about talking with the individual and whoever I'm holding space for. So it's important for me. I didn't realize this early on until I realized that I had expectations for things like the group setting, and I have expectations for maybe the way that I have, even as a space holder. I expect for you to honor the medicine. I expect for you to honor our sacrament. I expect for it to be something, but these are my expectations, and they may not always fall in alignment with your experience and what's going to happen. So being able to understand, that I'm human and that I can have those expectations, but um, understanding it from a more in-depth perspective to where how do we have conversations about this before your experience? So, I think it's important to know I may not be able to honor everything that you expect or what your intentions are for your experience as far as from the space holder, but I do find that it's an important conversation to have.
Yeah, managing expectations for sure.
I did see someone asked a minute ago in the question, or they asked a question about what is holding space.
Mhm.
They were wondering if we could define and maybe talk a
Mhm.
little bit more about what holding space is.
Yeah, I was actually going to go there with this
Okay.
around intention. So, which is a reminder, if you guys have questions or anything you'd like for us to talk about on the topic, please drop it in the chat. We want to get to those if we can. Um, so, so what is holding space? This is there's so much here that we could explore. And I see what Courtney just wrote in there about creating a vessel. And so this is how I even look at my intention as a space holder. So when I have a much more focused intention when I'm holding space. And I would like to be able to speak to this in the context of being a dosing space holder as well. All right. So I'm gonna divide this into two tracks. I do not recommend folks start holding space for other people while you yourself are on mushrooms. Okay. I would not encourage you to start out that way unless you are working very closely with someone who is highly experienced and has been doing that for a very long time. That being said, there is it can create a significant advantage as a space holder for yourself as the space holder and the person or people that you're holding space for. Right? It can be of benefit to everyone if that is the case. If you are experienced enough, you trust the medicine enough, there's other support around you that's not also consuming mushrooms as well. And this is a pretty central part of what we teach and what we practice at Psanctuary. I've been teaching people to hold space while on mushrooms for a long time. And I've been doing it myself for a long time. Where I like to speak to this directly. So whether or not I'm holding space with consuming the sacrament or not, my intention is really the same: to do whatever needs to be done whenever it needs to happen in that space. And that's intentionally broad because you have no idea what could come up. You just absolutely have no. And the moment you think that everything is easy breezy, it can flip on its head completely. And you've got to be ready to respond at a moment's notice and whatever that looks like. We'll get more into the kind of the real challenges with that when we start talking about this whole spirit world component, because that's when the space holder job gets really tricky. And what I started to find after I got into holding space for others with the sacrament that is significantly different, although I do work with this now when I don't consume sacrament, is that you can take the heightened awareness that is brought on through consuming the mushrooms, and you can apply that like a laser focus to the people in the space around you. Okay, so when I consume sacrament, my intention is to, yes, do anything that needs to be done, but on a more on a deeper level, it becomes to be, how do I even say this, to be like, to use my being as a tool. And we're going to really quickly get into some of the weirder stuff here, but there is a reality. Sorry for turning for my mic. I'm looking for a book here. I don't have it. Where'd it go? Some of my Qigong books. So there is just, oh, there it is. This book here, Healing Light of the Tao, Montauk Chia. His work has been so powerfully informative for me as a space holder. But basically, the understanding that we are far more than just material beings, far more than just physical beings, that we are etherical, energetic, spiritual beings, and that we have abilities, senses that we are generally completely unaware of. And so, as a space holder, while under the influence of mushrooms, and just for a bit of perspective here, and it's kind of hard for some to maybe understand, but like the more difficult of a person or a situation, like if I'm working with somebody that's got a lot of trauma, like a lot of trauma, and we have a connection, and I've got good support around me, I'm going to dose higher. The more challenging the situation, the higher I'm typically going to dose. So I've had ceremonies where I've dosed anywhere from 5 to 15 grams as a space holder, and I am not recommending you do that. I'm telling you, that takes so much practice. It takes so much trust. It is no joke, but it is a place where we can begin to experience a completely different reality of ourselves as space holders. And so I want to move energy. That's what I want to do. There's like, as I understand it, all of the stuff that comes up and all the stuff that we work through, it's just stuck energy. It's just stuck energy. And if I understand myself as I now do, as this churning energetic field that is absorbing and processing and transmuting energy, then I go into this with the intention of being that vessel, creating that vessel around me by being that vessel of transmutation of the energy within me. So, I'll do Qigong as it's coming on. And especially again, if I am working with the sacraments, called the Healing Light of the Tao. I see somebody asking a question about that, David Funky. And so anyway, that's just like speaking of my intention as a space holder from those two different tracks. And I do a lot of the same stuff when I don't consume. Like the last ceremony that we did together, I didn't consume any mushrooms, but I had some significant kind of co-processing experience of information. Again, that's more how I understand it. Energy is information. And I don't look at it as good or bad. It just is what it is. And so, space holding for me is like this dynamic, amazing opportunity for me to immerse myself in the field of all of the energies that are there present. And that includes the trees, that includes the natural bodies that are there, be it a river, or mountains, or whatever's there, to become like enmeshed in this energetic field and help support that space by co-processing the energy and the information that is being released through the consumption of this amazing and beautiful sacrament. Yeah.
Man, I love that answer. Yeah, I think for me, it's it kind of feeds a little bit feeds back into the RFRA, right? Where it's you're practicing your spiritual rights, you're practicing your freedom, and I'm here to hold space for you while you do that. It's not about me. It's about your safety. It's about it's about someone, like you said, Eric, being with you, who's experienced in the space, someone who can help to not navigate your experience, but someone to reflect back to you that you're not alone, that you're doing a great job, that just being there to move energy like you were talking about, Eric, being able to sense that as a space holder, being able to see and feel what's going on in the situation with no words being spoken, no eye
Mhm.
contact, being in that almost meditative state and feeling the energy moving around you, being intertwined with that. So yes, I agree with you. Having a dose with someone um, can can really put me into that energetic space. It can really help to shift me into that experience with them, into a place where I can support them more fully. Uh, but I think just to touch on it, just the holding space is just about, for me, it's about holding that space with love. It's about being there with intention and care and purpose, um, for the other person or for the other people that I'm holding space for, and to allow them to experience their sacrament
Mm.
without having to worry about it, without having to feel, like I said, alone, or even that they would have so it's amazing what it does for people when you're not even in a visual line of sight for them, but they can just turn and see you and then move back into their experience, and what that does for someone to allow them the comfort, and just it makes a huge difference.
Yes, yes, and that is like on the fundamentals. Like that is the fundamental. What I hope to bring to the space every time is a solidity that allows an individual to let go as much as they possibly can. I just want to be as solid and affirming and empowering. That's the thing I don't like about this whole concept of guiding, or whatever, however you want to talk about it in that way, is that, like, I'm not here to guide your experience. Like, I'm here to support your experience. Whatever, this is your experience. Like, I'm here to encourage it and empower you to have. And I, like, from a long time now, I've been, the way that I look at this is like, I'm there as a space holder to, in a lot of ways, to try to, I hesitate to say the word teach, but it definitely becomes that once you start spending more and more time in space with the same people. It's like, I'm here to teach you how to do this for yourself. I'm here so that you can feel safe enough that you don't need me, you know? And so that's a whole there's so much here, you all. There's so much here. I'm even seeing, like, I want to go off on this whole thing. I want to get in this conversation about the purging. I'm not going to right now. Maybe we'll come into that here in a little bit. But I would say yes. If you feel a purge coming, just give into it. It's gonna be good for you. I can promise you that. But there are several different perspectives on the origin and what that's like. So, all right, intention and intention setting. We've covered that pretty well here. Let's get into the real the what do I call them? Oh, fuck it, I don't know. I can't think of it. There's uh, the words that everybody loves: the set and setting. Right? These are the things that we always hear about: set and setting and integration. Set and setting and integration.
Mm.
And this is there's so much that can be said here. Um, so for those of you who don't know, maybe I'm probably, I don't know. I don't want to assume that everybody here is super experienced, but set refers to your mindset. Setting refers to the physical setting. Jeff, you had some pretty compelling things to say here about your perspective on helping folks prepare for set and setting as a space holder.
Yeah, sure. Um, so for me, in preparation, I really like to talk about, uh, break the two apart and talk about how setting to me is mindset. It's where I'm at with what's going on in my life. It's where I'm at with what's going on with my intentions for having this ceremony. So I'm really having a conversation with individuals from that perspective. I'm really kind of wanting to hear, where they're at, what's going on in their life, um, where their setting's going to be afterwards as well, not just mentally, but even the setting for their integration. You mentioned that, is such a big part. So really just kind of getting the big picture and the idea of the person that I'm sitting for, with their mindset, with what's going on inside, where they are internally. Also, having conversations with them about the mindset going in, about anxiety, panic, working with things like talking and discussing things like breath work, even stimming of some sort, anything that helps to bring calm back to them. Anything that I can help to bring into that mindset of, even if something comes up, I'm going to be okay in this situation. It's just, you know, the mindset to me is just as important. You and I had discussed it. It's so just because I have a free day today doesn't mean that, oh, I didn't have anything to do, maybe I should just eat mushrooms. Maybe I shouldn't just decide on a whim that all of a sudden I should eat mushrooms. That being said, my personal experience and what I do is I listen, and when I'm told, when I feel like it's time to eat mushrooms, when I feel called, the time usually shows up perfect, just like it's supposed to. I usually don't have to do too very much.
Mm.
So that's important to not, or at least in the people that I'm working with, it's important for me to explain to them, the consequences that can come from those on a whim experiences. Not saying that people can't have beautiful experiences that way, or learn a lot, but it's important with people who are, I feel like, who are new to the set and setting idea. But then let's move over into setting and what we're going to do. And me personally, I have a pretty nice outdoor setting for people, so I'm able to discuss with them, what their external boundaries are, what they basically have the opportunity to walk around and have a safe setting. But I've held space with people that maybe their setting is their house, maybe their setting is an Airbnb, maybe it's something that a space or a place that has been rented out, and really being aware of how that can affect your experience, being aware of how um, what things can come into your experience during that time. It's just huge and important conversations to have, and the way that they can affect your experience. So um, for instance, I was holding space for someone at a space that someone else had provided, and in the middle of someone's experience, someone came into the back of the building and they started running a saw.
Mm.
Now, luckily, the 2.5 hours that they ran the saw, this person never even acknowledged that it was even happening. However, if it would have made this person panic, this was just something. Now, this was one of my learning process, one of my learning experiences where I had to learn to choose things a little bit more wisely. These are outside of my control. So that's kind of my responsibility as a space setter. So that's even along the way, the set and setting, these are things that have evolved. These are things that have changed. They haven't stayed exactly the same since the first day that I started.
Well, that's one of the most important things about like being authentic in this work, is to never think that we know what's the way, right? I believe anyway, we've got to be super flexible, always willing to learn. Hey, there's a better way, there's a different way here. So that mindset of a space holder, of being like in that beginner's mind, as it's often referred to, I find to be really, really important. And I feel so much of what you're saying, especially around the setting and helping, or the set rather, helping people get into the right mindset, which it can be it can be more challenging than the right setting.
Mhm.
The right setting for me, like there's kind of two things that I look for in a setting, aside from like the physical safety of the space, but that's the privacy, and is it in nature? And depending on the individual, what kind of things like bathrooms and utilities and those kinds of things look like, if necessary, especially when doing a group ceremony. Those are things you got to consider a little more so. But having done so many ceremonies in Airbnbs or in somebody's house, and knowing the potential for unwanted attention, for unwanted stimulus, and how they can really drastically shift the nature of the experience is super important to consider. I'm thinking of this one instance that I worked with a lady or two ladies, and were they were insistent they wanted to do the ceremony in one of the woman's childhood homes, and the nature of the space, like there was a painting on the wall of a ship in a rocky sea, and it was like way down the road. And during the day, like this one of the individuals ended up going into a real fear loop. She was in a childhood bedroom of her friend, and it triggered these negative memories from herself as a child, and she felt like she had been kidnapped. She like this is another important thing to consider. We talk a lot about in our trainings is the use of phones, or the people having their phones, and like, you know, like if you tell folks to turn in their phones, that can really negatively influence someone's mindset at some point, like get into a paranoid loop of why are you taking my phone, right? So I kind of like don't have the practice of making people turn over their phones, or I know that's what some folks do. I would rather just deal with it if I need to deal with whatever the consequence is. And in this instance, this individual got paranoid, thought that she had been kidnapped, and called her family, who just got freaked out because, like, what's going on? Her, they didn't know she was taking mushrooms. And later on down in the day, after we finally got her to a point of, or it finally came to a point, we took care of her so that she got to a point of some level of stability. There was this painting on the wall of a ship in a rocky sea, and one of the things that she related was that she thought that she had been kidnapped, and that I was the captain of this ship that she had been kidnapped onto, and how the ship was sinking, and like all this stuff was triggered simply by the setting. And as a space holder, when someone says to me, and this is like, there's so much here. And you talk about lessons learned. So one of the things that Sanctuary has moved to now is that we do our ceremonies are donation based, right? And this is one of the reasons why I find it so powerful and so helpful to be doing donation based ceremonies, because we set the space. This is where we're having ceremony. If you would like to come be a part of it, there you go. When someone's paying $500 or whatever it is for a ceremony, then they say, I want to have this ceremony in my house. You're not necessarily obligated to do so, but like it's kind of hard to say we're not going to do that, right? Because then, and like you can do that. I'm not going to go down that whole. There's a whole rabbit hole of a conversation that we could have there, but suffice it to say that this is just a piece of the puzzle as to why we feel really good about doing donation-based ceremonies and keeping money out of ceremony space as much as possible. And it just speaks to how influential just a small factor in a setting can be in the direction of somebody's experience. And those can't always be controlled, even in the place where we hold ceremony now, that is a super private, super quiet space. They were logging, like we're out in the middle of nowhere, Kentucky. And the last ceremony we did, they started logging like 30 minutes before we go into ceremony. And you could hear it way over in the distance. And it didn't bother anybody, but there are always going to be unpredictables. I've had instances where in the middle of a nowhere beach in Jamaica, with veterans who had significant PTSD in the middle of a high dose experience, military helicopters fly over. All right. And some of this stuff, like this starts to dovetail into the conversation around supernatural or synchronistic experiences, that there's more going on here than meets the eye. Right. And to an extent, you can say, well, whenever you have your experience, and wherever you have your experience is exactly when and where you were supposed to. And there is all the more reason to be really intentional about when, where, and what state of mind you're in when you have that experience. I saw To Be Better posting in the comment thread about sometimes planning a ceremony, getting all the way up to the doorstep of it, basically, and then intuition saying, "No, don't do this." Right? I still say, excuse me, I still say that's why we got arrested. Right? For those of y'all that don't know, Courtney and I were arrested in 2015. We had planned this ceremony for a few weeks with some friends. There were all these indicators. I couldn't get the fire to light. And it was just like, it felt weird. And I was thinking, I like ego driven, just forced the fire to light and finally got it there. And then this individual came to me and said something that was like, it was just like hell, don't do this, Eric, don't do this. And my ego was like, no, we planned this ceremony. Everybody's here. I'm not going to stop now. Pass out the mushrooms. And that's the experience that ended up leading to us getting arrested. And I feel so strongly that was because I did not listen to what spirit or intuition was telling me that night. So there's just like, as a space holder, the need for us to pay attention to our mindset, the mindset of everyone that's in the space, all the nuance of what's going on, the nuance of the setting, and everything that could happen there. It's probably the most important responsibility as a space holder, at least prior to the mushrooms being consumed. You can do all the prep work and all the talk you want to, but if there's somebody that doesn't feel right in a ceremony, and there have, since that whole instance that got us arrested, there have definitely been times where I've gotten right to the doorstep of a ceremony and told someone, like, I'm sorry, but like, I don't think you're a good fit for this, and this is not going to happen right now. And we have to be willing to take that. I did also see Rex Douglas say in there that I think this is a really important piece of this for us to speak to, Jeff, is that power is built into the role of space holder. And this is a component of mindset for someone who is there. It's also a component of mindset for someone who is holding space. And it's also part of the setting, right? So we, the space holders, are a huge part of set and setting. So I wonder if you could help me take a breath and speak to that a little bit there, Jeff.
Yeah. Well, that, the first thing that came as you mentioned that was, man, that's kind of exactly why I brought up, having the conversation about what are the expectations of me as that space holder. The reason that I asked that is because or the reason that I bring that up is because it's like, how can I gauge what you think of me? And how do I do that from a, I don't want to say a professional standpoint, but as professional as possible? How do I do that from a egoless standpoint, to where I'm asking not for what you think of me, but really evaluating how you think of me, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Because for me, it's been very important along the way, through all the conversations and all the things and the places that, like, sometimes people lean out to me and they're like, they think, oh, I might have the answer, or they might think that, you've been through this, so what should I do, or what, I'm just on this journey with you. I'm not anything above you. I'm here as your friend. I'm here as family, as you're my brother, you're my sister. I love you. I want to be here to support you for this experience, but I'm not above you. And just because I have more experience in this setting or this space does not mean that I'm going to understand or be better than anyone else who is here to do this. But I think that for me, I had to, along my journey, is where I had to start to check my ego. When I first started holding space, I wanted to give back. I wanted to be able to hold space for others so that they could get some of the same healing that I get. Is this feedback on my end coming back, or is it?
I'm not gonna need.
Okay, I'm just hearing something like wind. But so I think the easiest way um, to explain it is that, I wanted to hold space. I wanted to gain the experience, but which part of me was my ego in that? And it was the ego that was, I was wanting to hold space, not, I was wanting to gain experience out of holding space. So the getting experience part was my ego. The wanting to hold space was my spirit. So I found myself, I don't want to say chasing it, but I was making myself very available. I was making, I was not covering the bases on my ends for the things that I needed, because I was just trying to give back. I was just trying to get this experience so I could get in here and get this done. Because it's what I felt called to do. It wasn't because I was trying to make anything out of it. I wasn't trying to get anything. I was just honestly just how could I not be sharing this with the people? And my eyes was, how do I bring this to other veterans? How do I bring this to the same people who who are going through some of the things that I went through, trying to find something, not saying that this is the answer, but it's a possibility that it could be. And if you're already drinking, you're already taking the pills, you're already doing all the other stuff, and they're not working. To me, that was my, so how do I bring this to that community? That was a huge pull for me. But there was a lot of ego involved in trying to get to the point where I was comfortable enough to bring it to my community. So really having to check that a lot. Um, that was within the first year. Since then, I tried to adapt and change and do things differently along the way, like incorporate not only my self-care, but also my self-work. And my self-work being, in the beginning, finding a place to process what was going on in these experiences, finding a place to be able to talk, to be able to work through these things that I was experiencing in these experiences with other people, because it's just not it's not something that, I'm not, as a space holder and me holding integration and processing time for you, I'm not going to bring my processing into that. I might bring a thing or two up that I was present in the experience, or that was present for me, but it's not about me. This is your time. But as a space holder, you accumulate 1, 2, 5, 10, 15 experiences. You need to be talking to somebody. You need to be working through these things. So for me, I evaluated and recognized my ego pretty early on, and I was able to come from a standpoint of, what do I need? How do I need? And how is my ego serving what I'm trying to do? And I really found that my ego was holding me back more than what it was helping me to move forward, and really kind of shifting that to the side, because it doesn't go anywhere. I still have to be present and aware that it's there, but I can also be aware when I'm operating out of that ego, you know? And so, yeah, I think it can be easy, or it can feel easy to feel like, oh, I've done this a lot, or, this is what I do. And this is, well, but realistically, each situation is new, and I'm just learning. This could be completely different, something I've never seen, that I've never, kind of like the first time that you're holding space and someone decides to shed their clothes and run as fast away from you as they can. uh, I wasn't prepared for that, is what I thought I was mentally in my head. So moments like that and holding space, moments in the processing with other individuals, they've really helped to humble what I feel like humble my ego quite a bit.
Man, I'm so glad you brought that in here. I don't know if it's the herd of horses there that are above me, Courtney Rose, or it's the furnace or what. I'm in a basement studio here, so sometimes we get what we get. But I appreciate you all giving feedback there in the chat on audio, etc. When that is necessary and helpful. So thank you very much on that. Oh man, but this conversation around ego as a space holder is one that I don't hear many folks talking about it, and it is probably one of the most important conversations that space holders can be having, because it is like, it's just almost impossible for that ego. You've got to be constantly putting it in check. You've got to be constantly keeping it in check, because what Rex just said here above, what was it you said there? But where to go? Inherent authority. that not only do the individuals perceive you as inherent authority, but you yourself begin to perceive yourself as an inherent authority. And continuing to humble ourselves is so important. It's so important to creating that safe space. Um, and I guess I'd love for you to speak, Jeff, too, if we could talk a little bit about this. I didn't plan on talking about it like this, but it's coming up because it feels like it's such a key part of why we wanted to move to donation-based ceremonies. You see out in the psychedelic space, these, $1,000 an hour session space holders, or there was one I just saw an article the other day about the world's most expensive plant medicine space holder, $1 million a session in Nashville, Tennessee, right? He only works with people that can pay $1 million a session for him. And I'm not here to negate anybody else's practice, but in my practice over the years, I've absolutely found that, yes, as someone was mentioning in the chat, Homestead, I believe, that there is an impact on expectations, but there is, even more importantly, there's an impact on myself and my ego when I start connecting my income with holding space. And so this is something I've watched you kind of work through, Jeff, and I would love if you could talk about how you've your relationship with this part of the process.
Yeah. So let me get you to clarify that question one more time, just because it was kind of wrapped up.
Yeah.
In a lot of
so if you could just speak about how for you this process of going from ceremonies for hire to ceremonies for on this donation base through Psanctuary, and how that relates to this idea of ego and setting as a space holder.
Well, I don't have a lot of experience charging. For me, that was so for me, it was, like I said, I was trying to gain experience. What I found happening more often was people were wanting to donate. And I was having a problem with that. I think I've told you, I had people donate to the person who was sitting as my second, who was there with me as my second space holder, because they knew that I wasn't going to accept it. And then there was a time where I was, after that, where I kind of moved into the idea of opening up to, if you want to give a donation, then you can. Was understanding, my time and energy, and some sort of energetic exchange. And the idea was never to hold space, for me, was never to hold space for an income or to do it for monetary purposes. But what had the biggest effect on me, and I don't even know if you and I have had this conversation from this perspective, but what had the biggest shift, what caused the biggest shift in my perspective, was once I started to realize the healing that I was getting from holding space for other people, once I started to understand that helping other people process and integrate their experiences was processing and integrating my own experiences, that I couldn't, you couldn't pay what that was giving me. You couldn't, I couldn't ask you for a value of something. And it was never my intention. Like I said, it was never something that I expected to get. And then, being a part of Sanctuary and watching us uh, evolve along the way, and to be where we are now, it to hold space for someone, for the sheer pleasure of holding space for someone, for not only because I know what it's going to do for them, but also what I know what it's going to do for me. It just completely changed the perspective of asking for anything. Um, I almost feel like there are times where, while others are integrating, they'll speak of something, and they haven't quite figured it out yet, and that's okay. But man, it blew something in my experience wide open. You know, like I said, to the point where I need integration from helping other people integrate. I need, because it's sparked something in my own experience. It's done something for me. So my evolution, you know, has been um, to just be here as that steward, as that space holder, as that friend, and taking any type of money or expectation from money out of it changes it from a physical perspective to a spiritual perspective for me.
As yes, yes, and yes. I remember the first time I realized that I was actually receiving healing from being in the space. Like I felt this wave hit me in Jamaica of these people, like they took mushrooms, and all of a sudden I just felt this like, just like I didn't tell you I hadn't taken any. I just felt it hit me, and it's like this voice came to me and was like, when other people take mushrooms around you, you receive healing as well.
Mm.
And that, I think that was kind of, it wasn't maybe like, that wasn't maybe the moment that I was like, oh, we got to detach this from money. But that was certainly kind of the single point where I can remember like there was a beginning to that determination. And, you know, I see the comments of folks in the chat there talking about how it makes them sick to see these big money space holding and how just want to throw in on food. Like that's exactly what we're building here at Sanctuary. Nobody has their income, their salary tied to space holding at Sanctuary. There are people who hold space who are on salary, but that is not what their salary is attached to. It's just, this is what we do for each other. This is what we do for each other. It's peer to peer. Nobody is above anybody else. We're all on the same level. And this is exactly what has allowed me for the first time in 25 years to have space held for me by Jeff. Jeff is the first person in 25 years that has ever that I have ever been with who I truly felt had the heart and the wisdom and the experience to just let me have my fucking experience and like give me some water if I needed it, you know, because that's mostly what people need is to just like, especially if they're experienced. I wanted to do a really big dose on my birthday, and I did. And it was incredible. And it was so amazing to share that with you, Jeff. And yeah, no, there's so much there. And I would love what, like you bridged it so well, is that this is what makes it a spiritual experience. Sure, you can treat psychedelics as mental health therapy, and they are certainly very good for that. There's plenty of research out there that shows us, though, that the mental health benefits come from mystical experience, and that having these spiritual experiences are central to who we are as human beings and to our healing. And so when money is in the middle of a spiritual experience, like we already see how that's happened for churches for millennia, right? Like it just muddies the waters for everybody. It creates this power imbalance. And so disconnecting money from our ceremonies has been, we've been working towards this for 5 years now, probably about 8 years for me as an individual. And I am so grateful that we have. And, you know, I guess I'll use this to kind of bridge in there. There was once in Jamaica where there was a therapist that I used to work with who started to get into the spiritual space. Like she was very material. A super duper friend of mine. I love this woman, Ben. If you ever listen to this, you know how much I love you. And she came to me one time, and she was starting to get into what I really like to talk about in terms as like the energetics, right? So, like for me, my perspective around spirituality is that we are physical beings, but we're more than that. We're energetic beings, and there's this world of energy and entities around us that we can engage with. And Ben came to me after a ceremony once, and she said, Eric, you know that this is not work for money to be made off of, don't you? And I was like, oh yeah, I'm definitely seeing this, you know. And that came out of supporting people through powerful mystical otherworldly experiences that you could never put a price tag on. You could never put a price tag on. And here's the last thing I'll say about the money thing. I'll say this and move on. But this is the other thing. 90%, 75% maybe, but probably like 80%. I don't know. There's a percentage in there somewhere of the ceremonies that you will ever hold for someone are going to be low key. They're going to be easy. It's going to be some of those beautiful, relaxing days where you just watch somebody have like a beautiful experience and you do a little more than get them some water or whatever, some food at the end or whatever it might be. Pretty low maintenance. And then there are those experiences that are all day long. You are sweating. You are doing some of the most difficult, unpredictable work that you will ever know. And those days are worth $10,000. Like you can't put a price tag on that stuff. So to try to put a single price on something like this that is generally you just get so much healing and so much benefit out of, and on a very rare occasion you have a long, hard, stressful day, it doesn't make sense. And those long, hard, stressful days are often some of the most spiritual, like otherworldly, I guess. I want to make that distinction that there is this, like, at least in my framework, there is this energetic spiritual experience, and then the spectrum can go from anywhere from like transpersonal transference between individuals to full-blown, for lack of a better word, channeling or possession or whatever it might be. And I've seen it all, and it is probably the most difficult, if not impossible, thing to really prepare space holders for going into this. It's something that you can really only learn through experience. So, Jeff, can you speak to some of your experience in regards to this spiritual, energetic, otherworldly space as a space holder?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think first I'd just like to say, this is how I got to Sanctuary. In my own personal experience, I had that ineffable experience of spirit and of the way that I've put it before, just knowing that I was wrong, where I had decided there was no God, there was no spirit, there was nothing bigger than us. So really having that personal experience myself, being blown away from a perspective of not knowing anything, not knowing who to ask the right questions to, or what even the right questions were, or even what was going on, just knowing that lost, yet I don't want to say awakened, but that's that lost, but aha moment, so speaking of that, my experience, spiritually, otherworldly, um, in tune with my creator, those experiences in my own experience have grown on each other. They have expanded as my spirituality has expanded. Um, so really working with, in my experiences, working with seeing entities, working with getting downloads from um, Thoth and Divine Feminine, and just some things that really blew my fucking mind. Things that I have no language um, to discuss without this community, without the people in this community. So for me, that was my introduction to it. That's been my work with it for the last couple years. Now, moving into this space while holding space for other people. Without my own experiences, I don't think I would understand it from a perspective of compassion and empathy, from the understanding of, even though I might not be in this experience, I can energetically understand what's going on. I can feel, based off of my own experiences and the way that I know that things feel, I can feel the energy coming off of these experiences. I can recognize when I need to try to help ground, when I need to try to help center, when without saying a word, without interrupting an individual, just sending my energy and moving and clearing things. I've moved things into trees. I've pulled centering and grounding out of trees, moved things into the earth. In our last experience, just watching what happened when the form of a circle and then walking around in that circle with one individual. When you walked around with tobacco, and the moment that the tobacco hit this person, they were out of what they were in at that moment. These are the things. These are the things that tell me, not only are the things that I'm feeling are real, and this is it's just from a perspective that I can't understand in this form, but being in that space, I'm much more subjective to understanding that. I'm much more subjective to opening that door and to being intertwined in that energetic space. Um, so yeah, working with some that I've seen. I've been in a group ceremony with you guys, watching someone work with fire spirit. I've seen many others work with different trees and earth. Just watching them move their own energy, feeling them bringing in the energy, and then. Sorry, I don't want to bounce around a lot, but it's a big subject to try to throw in a few minutes. But there's those experiences, where people are experiencing either things from their past. They might be what they're seeing as demons in their past. They might be, um, you know, uh, sitting with God and having a conversation with God. How do you process and integrate a conversation in 2 hours after someone just had a 6 hour conversation with God? You know, so really, it's just been based off my experience and what happens. And like you said, each one's different, and there's no really being fully prepared, I don't think. Um, but the things that come up in that, for the way that we hold space as Sanctuary, makes all the difference. I had a place to integrate my therapeutic experiences, the things that I was doing, but I had no space, no place to talk about spirituality. My therapist wouldn't dive into spirituality with me, and I think that coming from our community's perspective, coming from my own personal perspective of seeking out our community because of my spirituality, or because of that otherworldly experience, that it helps me as a space holder to understand and work with those individuals in that space, whether it's they're afraid, whether it's they don't think it's going to end and it's not a good experience for them. Just each thing's different, but it's being able to fill that out energetically. And sometimes, like I said, it's not making a physical move at all. Sometimes it's just everything is energetic. And then sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's breaking that energetic concentration that they have, recognizing that this is too overwhelming for them. Recognize, a good one for that is, I don't know what else to call it, but maybe that spiritual convulsion that, they're in that experience, and you can feel the energy, and something, and really waiting on my intuition to tell me when to step in, or when, and really, that's what I'm trusting spirit, and in that, trusting even that energy in their experience to let me know. uh,
Mhm. Mhm.
so it's a broad subject, but it's something that I find that, having a lot of conversation about it in the pre-ceremony conversations, speaking not only that it does happen, but that it could happen, and building up that person's ability of coping or working through, and being able to um, sit in whatever's going to be there, and really kind of gain what it is that they're supposed to be gaining from there. I have found myself being afraid of it and running from it, and but I feel like having conversations with people, I've had post integration conversations with people where they're very specific and saying, the conversation that we had about that kept me from running. The conversation that we had about that made me realize that. that yes, it wasn't comfortable, but it was exactly what I was needing. And then they ended up getting something much more than just a therapeutic experience out of it.
Yeah. And well, this is the thing that's not really talked about in the therapeutic world. And I definitely want us to get to this loop question. Before we do, I just want to share this experience that just came to me. It's it feels like there's value to share this experience and providing a kind of a broader understanding of the possibilities here, and kind of like what I really hope to try to get people to just consider, is, um, that there's more to this experience than we perceive. And so, like, what you were something that you spoke to, I don't remember exactly what you said, Jeff, but it took me back to this experience that I had years ago with the gentleman. um, he was going to take a big dose. Like, he wanted to take, like, I think it was a 12-gram dose, right? And this was his third session or ceremony, and I was there for it. It was a group ceremony. And um, I have always been such a very trusting, so trusting of people. And I would just like give out, in Jamaica, we did capsules, and I would give out capsules to people and just be like, all right, take your capsules, go to your spot, take your capsules, and let's go. And this individual, I didn't know this until after the fact, but he had gotten someone to give him another 2 grams. So I had thought he was taking 12 grams, and he ended up taking 16, right? Didn't tell me until after it was all said and done. But what happened in the experience is he was completely overwhelmed, that he was just like on the ground, just like freaking out, like, oh my God, Eric, it's too much, it's too much. And this space where being in the space with individuals can be so valuable. He said to me, he kept saying, Eric, help. I know you can help take it off. I know you can help take some of this off of me. And he was like on the ground on all fours. And I went over there beside him and got on all fours and went into breath work. And I had taken some mushrooms as well, but I got into breath work and found myself able to like draw some of that energy off of him, and found myself like, tripping harder, so to speak, but helping him equalize. And it just like it just impressed on me so much, that even us as space holders are, that whatever is happening in this space, we're getting what we need. And that was such an important experience for me to tangibly begin to understand that this is just like, it's all energy. My very first mushroom experience when I was 19 years old was, just kept saying over and over, it's all energy. And that has been the experience, that's been the lesson that keeps coming up year after time after time after time, which is part of this conversation around the loops. And so, if we can answer, I forget who was it, asked Zententional Breath here, asking about loops and what to do about loops and how to work through loops. And man, the irony, the paradox of the loop is that, like, you can't get out of it until you let go into it, right?
Mm.
Which is how I experience this, is like, it's just energy. It's this looping energy, and our attention to it, our awareness to it, and our resistance to it is the very thing that keeps it looping. And as we can just let go into it, we can start to feel every loop gets a little lighter until it just finally dissipates. Or maybe you have an experience where it's just all of a sudden gone. My experience tends to be that it lightens. These loops come around and they get lighter and lighter. I don't know. There's like, again, you all, with all of these things that we're talking about, we could talk about the loops for probably 35 to 40 minutes and maybe start to get somewhere with it. But let's go a little bit further, Jeff. What do you got to say about the loops and how to work with the loops?
Well, so I feel like, man, something says, as soon as you say this, boy, you're going to go on a fucking loop like crazy. But, whatever, bring it on. Uh, so I feel like for me, the death, the the experience that I was talking about, I'm not sure if I talked about it on here or if it was, but anyways, my death experience where um, it was just this impending. It wasn't so much of a loop like what I've been and experienced in a loop in a separate loop, but this one was very impending doom. This is happening, 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 this is happening. And it was like I learned something in that moment. It wasn't as much surrender as it was acceptance. And in that moment, I was able to say, okay, what do I need to do? Like it was like I was so consumed with fear of dying. I was so consumed that it wouldn't let me move past that moment. There was no time or moment for acceptance of what it was telling me because I was too afraid. In the moment, that like the second that I had acceptance and just spoke out loud, well, who do I have time to say goodbye to? What are the things that I can do before I have to go? It was completely gone. Like probably one of the fastest that I've ever experienced something be. Though it went from that to, oh, well, we don't have to be in the shower right now. You could probably get out of the shower and not be, you
What
know,
what
like,
how do you define the difference between acceptance and surrender? How do you
um, oof. I think surrender is this is happening to me, and acceptance is more of I can take a little bit of control of what's going on. I think they both have the same effect, maybe. But I'm not surrendering to it from the sense of saying, I'm going to be in this loop. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to do this. My acceptance is more of I'm saying I'm in the loop. I'm aware that I'm in the loop. What is this for? What am I learning? So I do understand the surrender, but I don't feel without the mental step forward that I would be out of the loop. Or at least that's my experience with the ones. Some of them, um, I've also experienced having that loop before. You and I had discussed in one of my experiences where it was like I was just hearing, this grandmother's going to die, and then this grandmother's going to die, and then your son, something's going to happen to your son, and then it was like, no, went back from my son, back to my grandmother, back to my other grandmother, back to my son, back, in that type of a loop. I wasn't able to break that loop mentally. I was attached to it in such a form that it had me, but I was able to acknowledge and know something inside of me told me that if I get to the ground will hold me. And the moment that my body touched the ground, the moment that I completed that action is what I feel like. I feel like it was just that I know this is what's going to happen. I'm going to get there. It's going to be, and then bam, it was just gone.
I
Uh,
want to I want to hit this real quick just to be better, sir. They're saying I needed the loop, man. Like this is something that we don't talk about enough either in this, right? We're always talking about how to get out of the loop or how to like avoid the discomfort or the negative trip. Maybe the very thing we need is to experience what we're experiencing.
hmm,
Sometimes there have been plenty of times as well that I've had experiences of a a loop, if you will, that like there was nothing but to just be with it. And like I'm with it and it's happening. It's still happening. And these weren't some of these, the ones that I can recall that were of that nature weren't the necessarily that I am immediately connected back to like the fear loops, but there have been loops of lessons that need to be learned, right? And it's like I need this. I need to keep coming back to this. I need to keep coming back to this. So, yes, thank you, Dank Bad, for asking that question again. I saw your question about the surgery, about how long before a surgery. It's going to depend on the type of surgery. Would be the first thing I would speak to. But basically, like, as long as you have time to physically, energetically recover from your experience, which for most people is going to be like 3 days, at the most. That depends. Like, you could have a really, really challenging, physically taxing experience, which is an outlier. It's not the norm. But I've certainly had like big trips, 9, 10, 12 gram trips that took me like 3 or 4 days to fully recover from. And everybody's different. If you are like, I've worked with folks who have bipolar 2, for instance, and have had a big trip. And some of those folks have taken like a week or two to get really back to center. And if that's the case for you, then you really want to be sure that you have a support system around you. Jeff has talked about this whole thinking about the integration before you even go into the experience. And that's really what your question centers around there. So if there's more that you'd like to ask about that or get more specific to, you're welcome to. But yeah, it's really going to be contingent upon the surgery that you're having, really what kind of prep time is needed for that, and kind of how much recovery time you would have. So if you aren't experienced with mushrooms, then I would give it at least like 2 weeks. If you do know yourself and how you respond and you tend to recover quickly, then a few days can be fine. So it might be a good way to get your head right going into that experience as well.
Yeah, I think I would comment also, that being in that loop, what you can find out of that loop, and something that came up for me in my processing of my experience of dying was that that a version of me did die, and that there was a part of me in that experience that didn't move on, that just becoming part of the person that asked the questions of, okay, what do I need to do now, what are the who do I need to talk to, the people that I need to tell that I love, and things like that. For me, that was a perspective shift. That was a big change in my life, from being that egoic and self-centered individual, and moving into the understanding of being a new person. And not saying that that's something that's for everyone in their loops, but I think that I just agree with that statement, that there's definitely something to be learned there. There's a reason that you were glitched there for a moment, or
Mm-hmm.
you know and a lot of people, I feel like, even in the integration, they'll kind of talk about it, but they really don't want to find anything in there to process. They don't want to evaluate. And some people, I've noticed that they continually go into loops, and I feel like some of it's not working through some of those loops in their experience.
I'm like actually recalling this loop. So like I see what Tripp is saying there, and I think there's some real value to that perspective, that this is like energetic blockages that we're clearing out, or neurological blockages. And all of a sudden, I was brought back to this experience of there were three people. There were three people. One, me being one, and these two other ladies that I was working with. There was actually four people in total, but there were three of us that were in this separate but connected loop. And like, it went on for like hours, where one person would go away, and this person that went away was there's a whole thing here. She ended up having a schizophrenic break. She was not on mushrooms. It was a whole big, wild, crazy, one of the craziest weeks of my life. But she was not even on mushrooms, but she had a schizophrenic break just by being around people that were on mushrooms. Not going to go into all that, but during this experience, the three of us, there was this kind of like clockwork like loop of, this one woman would have this kind of experience that would come on, and then I would go into this place, and then this other woman would come in, and then there would be this like energetic resolution. We would all depart, and then this one woman, the same thing would start coming back around, and then I'd find myself there looped in, and then here comes the other person in. And so I just like, this is, again, comes back to that notion of the more you know you don't know, and that there's something so much bigger going on here that we can, I don't know that we can ever really understand it. We can just experience it and process it and be with it to the extent that we can. I'm hitting another memory of on a beach with several folks, and it was like all night long there were five or six of us, and we could never share the same space together, but we would like rotate like clockwork around these different spaces. And after the night was ended, we all talked about it, how like it was like we were a solar system or something. There was no choice. There was no, you just all of a sudden you found yourself here and you're like, whoa, they're over there again. And then you're like over there again. I see it's Intentional Breath talking about this group loop. Yeah, it's wild. Go ahead.
I was going to say, well, I was just going to bring up a lot of people don't think it's a loop, and but something that I feel like I didn't really understand it as a loop either until I watched it happen in an experience, and I've watched individuals, but the laughter loop, to where they don't even want to be laughing anymore, and it's almost hurting, and they don't understand why they're laughing, but they're just, but it's really, just being aware of the things that are loops, because there are times where you're in loops in your experience that you're not even, it may not be a self-devastating loop or something, something that's gripping you from a perspective, but it may just be, um, like I said, the laughter, just something, and that group, that intoxicating, and what I experienced that laughter from was like, it was like this intertwining of energy, being able to kind of witness the three or four people that were just stuck to each other laughing, and it's like it would just flow from one end to the other, like they were connected, like, oh, I got my bearings together, oh man, and it shifts right to the next one, and then before they know it, they're right back into it and going back. So it's just man, it's an amazing experience to watch.
Yeah. Well, and now, like, oh, I'm so glad this topic came up, because now I'm like realizing, like, I have been and currently am in a bit of a elongated loop. Like, there were in 2011, I had some messages delivered to me that just like every time I would eat mushrooms, which was like twice a month for a solid year, I would go back into this same kind of looping of this information until I finally just accepted it and now like I'm in this kind of, like, there was this, I don't know that I can see it as a loop where, many years ago, 7 or years ago or so, I was told that at a certain time in the future, I was going to have this trip that was going to be monumental. And since that did end up happening, and since then, I'm now in this kind of like long-term loop where this experience keeps coming back in a little bit different form. And I can't necessarily predict it. Like, I'll have, and oh my gosh, wow. See, like, just talking about this stuff is so valuable. Like, I'm getting hit with some processing from that
Mm.
birthday trip that we did too, that I did with you at your place, and how, like, those loops that I was on for about 3 years from the time we moved back to the States feel at this moment that they culminated in that experience that was at your house. Now that's to be seen when I come back into the space again. Um, but suffice it to say that there's benefit to be had from the loops. They're not just to be avoided. Oh man, wow, we're here. We're getting in some real juicy stuff, and it's 8 o'clock, or just about 8 o'clock. We're gonna be bouncing off here. Anybody that wants to, yeah, deja vu, like on steroids. Anybody that's would love to share this space with us in a little more interactive manner, please click that QR code and sign up for our 3-day workshop that's coming up next weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. It'll be similar but more structured. And we would love to have folks in there that are actually engaging in those conversations more with us. I am certain that there will be some powerful takeaways that you'll be able to apply to your own work, either holding space for yourself or communing on your own, or holding space for others. This is our work. We love this work so dearly. Jeff has been I've worked with a lot of space holders. I've worked with a lot of people holding space, therapists, not therapists, people. I've worked with a lot of people holding space. Therapists are wonderful and amazing. I'm just saying that some of the best space holders that I've ever worked with are the people who have come through their fucking fire, like my brother Jeff here. And Jeff, it is always a pleasure to share space and hold space with you. Thank you for being a part of this call. You got anything you want to say to wrap it up here for the night?
Well, first off, thank you for the kind words. I really appreciate that. The only thing that I think I want to say, other than I love you guys, I'm really glad to be here. I love to be here with you, Eric. I love to sit and talk about all this. This is just like second nature. It's what we do anyways when we're on the phone.
Mhm.
But I see other caveman said something. I don't know if it's stigma of being a man or my military experience of or what, but allowing myself to surrender and let someone take care of me was one of the hardest things for me to do. You're not alone. You're not alone. I still have moments. I still have times where I have to have conversations with myself about this. And I have to understand things like I'm not where I was before and I'm not who I was before. But I just want you to know you're not alone.
Thank you for speaking to that. I'm
Okay.
glad I saw that. I'm glad you saw that, Jeff. Thank you so much.
Yep.
All right, everybody. God bless you. Whatever bless you, be blessed. Just be blessed. Thank you for sharing this space with us, Chris. Yes, I see you. I'll get you there, and look forward to seeing anybody there that shows up. Much love, everybody. Much love.